Today we're working on the iconic Jeep Commander. And the ailment or the symptoms that we're having on this one. Oh, this poor screen, this camera's been through so much. So when you go to put it in driver reverse, look at that little clunk. It's really clunky. I don't know, it sounds so good. We're lighting things up by getting rid of the wheels. Inspect the brakes while we're here. Looks like they're fine, they're just a little glazed. So the first thing you want to do is pull this big skid plate off of the bottom. It's really easy. It's a 13mm half-inch. Once you do that, you've got access to the drain plug for the differential. We're going to need to drain it because we need to pull the CV axles out to drop it down. Alright, so as we look at the bushing up here, we can see that it's just totally ripped out. There's just nothing. So it's held up from the top there. It's held up at the front here with this bracket, which is a lifesaver. It's really easy to replace. And then there's another one right here. Almost all the noise is coming between this one. You can see it's cracked and split there. And then the top one that you see over the back. It's by where the input shaft goes in. I've got everything soaked in PV Blaster. I've wire brushed everything pretty much. So this is a 14mm Allen wrench basically. You can get them in the sockets. They'll say 14H or something to that effect, or 14A. And just pull out the drain plug and drain the gear oil into a catch basin. Like that. Okay, so the next thing before we get this completely apart is we need to either scratch this or paint pen it or do something to mark this so that it can go back the same way. Chrysler has requested that it be marked, so that's what we're going to do. So you see the blue mark on there? I've got it, all the bolts out, got it marked. So anyway, I've got same setup, 8mm, and we pull the back, and that way it'll just be easier to film everything. A little wobble extension on there. Awesome. So propeller shaft's done. You can see it's got a little bit of a boot here. So push that in, pull it out. So there's where the propeller shaft used to go. Here's where it is now. I've got it pulled back and hanging out there. So when I grab hold of this and push from the bottom, you hear that knocking and banging. That bushing that used to live right there is totally gone. So that's the main attraction. So we're going to go ahead and get pulling the CV axles out and get this thing to where we can drop it. The ABS sensor won't come out of here. You're supposed to do that as per the factory manual. But there's enough slack if you undo each of these. Just put a screwdriver in and unbuckle it. You'll find that you're going to be okay. There we go. Like you can see here, there's plenty of slack. So whereas rather than break the sensor and have to go buy a new $80 sensor, it's best to just undo it this way. And you can unbuckle it up here if you want, but it's not really necessary. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 18mm socket, and we're going to go after this here, upper ball joint. I'm just going to break it loose for now. We're not going to remove it yet. Get it freed up like that. Switch out for your air gun. Go back down to the stabilizer link. See, it's just down here. Just have to pull one end of it. Just let that hang out of the way. Switch into your 21mm. Pull the tie rod. Once that nut's pulled out, you take a hammer, just crack it. Helps if you pull up a little on it. See, this one's free, but it's binding on the rotor now. So I want to turn the wheel the other way so we don't have a tie rod, so we don't have to worry about steering locks or anything like that. I have a wire. It's just a coat hanger is all it is. But I've got it ready to go. Bent into position up here on the spring. So what I'm going to do is undo the caliper bracket and then hang it. I like to do the bottom one first because it's harder to reach. You can see and access the top one really easy. So you want that one to be your easy one when this takes weight or gravity gets a hold of it. Set that aside. Brake hose will kind of get out of the way, so I'm supporting it with one hand. I can see and line this all up real easy with the other. There we go. Hang it, rock it, pull it. And then I just go through. Now, yeah, these are threaded, and that may make a new guy a little nervous, but been there, done that lots of times, no problem. There's some kind of rubber bushing ring something there. That's new. We don't necessarily have to have that off. The main thing is just a brake hose. Nice to have this off so it doesn't fall off, but it's not mandatory, so don't worry about it. Order operation says get the nut all the way off before knocking this loose, or else you're going to have trouble because this will just spin. It's free now. Watch your ABS wire. Like I said, we got a lot of slack on that. Pull this back. Like I say, the wishbone, this is rusted on so bad on the other side, it's just like forget it. So leave that together. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the hammer and hit the inboard side of the CV axle. Just get it to pop out of there. On the other side, you can use some kind of an extension drift, like a long pry bar or something. Alright, once this is out, you don't have to pull it out all the way for doing just these bushings or just a differential. If you're going to take the axle all the way out, then you got to pull this guy out. And good luck with that. So it's real easy to see everything now. We've got this guy on the front bottom. Go clear back past the catalytic converter. Look where the drive shaft was. Got this guy on the top. It looks like a 15 millimeter. And then this one's real easy. It's just right there. And see the axle's out of the way. We're just about ready to come down. Little cutie. Good idea to get a transmission jack under this, or somebody named Cletus, some big dude. So on the passenger side by the tube, this one's going to be a 15 millimeter. This one's an 18 millimeter. Look close, you can see it on the sock. I just stripe all my 18 ones like that, so it's easy to see at a glance. We'll go ahead and pull those out. So the main attraction one, you can't really get the camera in there because the viewfinder's sticking out. But you got an 18 millimeter on the front side. And then going back here, I've got the hose run up between the exhaust and the cross member. And that allows me to hook the gun back up, put a 15 millimeter long socket up above right there. So I'm gonna push in on the impact gun so that the nut just spits off the end, jumps off the edge, and catch it with the wrench, box end, and then just leave the bolt in there. Then I'll put the jack underneath and then work about pulling the bolt in and out. So I was dumb. I thought my name was Cletus, so I wound up having it sit on my chest. One thing I forgot to mention that'd be a good idea to do now is you got to undo the vent and undo your four-wheel drive indicator, whatever wire. I didn't do it. So I wound up having it sitting on my chest and had to work with that red plastic release stupid tab thing. I hate those Chrysler plugs. So here we have the offending clunker. This is the part of the bushing that came out from the middle. And it's supposed to look like this one over here. I'm going to go ahead and replace both of them. This is my personal vehicle. I'd probably just do that one, just because that one looks great and they're a pain to get out. So anyway, this thing's really heavy because it's got this great big heavy weight on it. So you have to get an E-socket. This one is an E12. So I'm going to pull that off. Yeah, that's pretty rusted. We're going to go for a bigger hammer. Got the front bushing off, and we got the new one staged, ready to go. I got the weight block off the bottom that was here, and now you just notice that it's flat on the bottom here. You also notice it's flat on the bottom here. You look at the new bushings, and they're all keyed up the same way. So just need to make sure they go in. So they go in from the back side as this is sitting in the vehicle. So we got to press them out this way, and then press these back in this way. Let's get to it. These are rusted in there pretty bad, so I'm pretty much going to have to just destroy them to get them to come out. Best way to get bushings to come out, typically, in my experience, is to fold them over and get them to indent, and that decreases their outer diameter. We're going to try this race set, front wheel bearing race and bushing puller. The problem is that you can't get the cup over the top of it because this flange is in the way. So we're going to have to mark a reference between the flange and the pinion so that we get it right, because apparently the pinion to the shaft is important. We're going to knock that little safety catch out with a screwdriver and a hammer and zip it off. See, the red mark is the flange to pinion one, and I've got that knocked out to where it should come out pretty good. You can add a 32 millimeter 12-point socket, stick it on there, grab the flange, set first, zip it off, and hopefully it's not pressed on and it'll come off half decent. Whackety schmackety, one side, the other side. Where's my real hammer? I got a brass hammer, it's just way too light, way too slow. There we go. There's no washer, just stack these, set them aside. This job gets bigger all the time. So what I have here is I have a screw press, all kinds of washers and adapters and everything. This one fits for the back side to draw it out. This one fits over the front side to let it suck in. So we'll set that up and show you how that works. So look how terrible that is. It's not perpendicular at all. This thing's it's going out sideways basically. It's not working. It sucks. So this method failed terribly because this surface here isn't uniform all the way around. It's got that little bridge at the base of it that just made it not work. Suck. So using this big dang chisel and this big dang hammer, I've chiseled it away about this much. Took me about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So it's intense, but it's making progress. Just to be clear, this is the problem right here. This little thing doesn't allow you see where the ring goes around the outside? That gets in the way where the flat spot meets it. It just, yeah, not made to be serviced, that's for sure. So I've been working it all the way around here. I've been working it here. I got it to move, and now it's coming pretty good. Knocking it through with the chisel. I just work one side, work the other side, and so on. Whole thing wants to move is a problem, but it's coming. Seems like you ought to be able to just whack that. What if take that little dowel thingy? Oh, it doesn't even truly fit in there, so I wouldn't have gotten anywhere with that. Or does it? It does. Alright, there we go. Done deal. Well, that's a tight fit. If it gets crooked even a little bit, it's not going to go through. That's exact size. Alright, well, that's down. Let's put this back in. So what I'm going to do is there's a bunch of rust in there. It was rusted in there really bad. That's why it's such a pain. So I'm going to clean that out with some sandpaper, lube it, put the bushing in. So I got a Scotch-Brite. It was easier to do than sandpaper. So I thought I was going to use this setup to drive the new one in, and that'd make my life a little easier. But look at the diameters on these things. There's no way I can feed that through that bushing. The hole's too small. It's got to be pressed or hammered in. Yuck. So I found this guy in the set, and seems to fit in there really well, so we're going to use that. Try hammering first, see how that goes, and then move on if I'm not successful. So tipping it up like that, it takes 2 hands, and you really got to be careful to keep it straight. So here's the final result. Flat spot on the bottom, nice and flush, nice and straight. Bent the lip over a little bit there, but that's good. It turned out awesome. I always got to do it on the other side. So this side doesn't have the same design flaw that the other one has. It's pretty round all the way around. So I'm going to try to just, basically you got webs on this thing. I'm going to just cut through each of the webs, pop out the middle, and then I'll be able to run that all thread bolt through there. We are through. So there's the remainder of the bushing. It's nice and warm on the outsides. And the smell in the shop isn't exactly pleasant either. It's like perfect fit for this. There we go. I was wondering when that was gonna fall into place. Alright, that looks centered. Loosen this and get it just right. I'm not supposed to use an impact with this, but I did grease the thread, so hopefully that helps. It's working, it's pulling through. Not only did it pull it through, but it cleaned it too. Awesome. These bearing pullers are awesome if the manufacturer sets it up where it would work worth a damn. My threads, after using an impact, it's nice and clean because of the grease I put on it. Great! And the bushing I pulled out, looks like you could use it again. I mean, it came out pretty clean. Awesome. So I'll take the new bushing. The new one's going to be a total cakewalk. I'll make sure to get the flat spot at the bottom for whatever reason. And I'll use that same cup that I did before. I'll just tighten it in there, right? Oh, wait a minute. Can't, because the bolt doesn't fit through there. It's too little. So I'm going to have to go in the same way I did with the other one. So I'm using parts from this kit. Parts from a ball joint press. And I'm just going to press it together like that. It's nice and clean. Having brought this down Cletus style, I think it's a lot better to use a jack, especially when it comes to putting it back in. Lining up those holes isn't easy, and you don't want to cross thread these ones here. The other ones are just stabbed through and you can pretty much muddle your way through it, but jack makes it so much easier, so that's what I've done. We're in there. I've got the lower bolts. I tightened these too tight when I first put it in, so I wanted to hang it by this one and the one on this side. And that's just finger tight. You can see there's a gap there still. But I had a really hard time getting the top one, the one that was worn out. I just really struggled. So I loosened the two in the front. Once I did that, I was able to get that bolt in, that one right there. And it centered up really nice. So you look at this guy, you can see my red paint mark, how that's all lined up. I got my ding back in the nut so that it doesn't come loose. And we're ready to put the rest of this back together. Okay, so we never took out the CV axle, so how do you get it to slip knock back onto there? Easy. Just take off the nut and you can slip knock. I jack it up with a jack so you get the right angle. Just bam, 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 bam. And it'll lock into place and you just put the nut back on. Awesome. So it's time to take out the filler plug. So you set your ratchet to loosen and just put it in there. It's like a Corvette key. It's not going to work. Okay, so what I came up with is you take your 14mm Allen wrench and then put your ratcheting box wrench on it, and then this configuration will work. Just kind of pretend that you're only using the Allen side, and that'll enable you to get that out. And there's just a little room left to work with. Clever, huh? I kind of thought so myself. So anyway, we'll get this ready and I'll show you how I fill the gear oil. A lot of you have already seen this, but it's also pretty clever. Learned it from a neighbor by the name of Howard. Bet you didn't know that a wheel makes a good tripod. Well, it does. And also an oil jug makes a good pressure fill. So I've poked a hole in the back of this thing and I'm feeding air into the top. That makes an air cavity here that pushes down on the fluid. This hose goes to the bottom where the fluid is, so it pushes the fluid up and into the differential. Much faster than pouring it in from above using a hose and funnel. Got a pretty steady stream going now, so I'm going to go see if I can track down that plug. These gear wrenches are just awesome. Do all kinds of cool stuff like this with them. Yeah! I think you just paid to have the fluid changed in this. Looked brand new and it had yellow paint on it. What a waste. We've got all the lines lined up on the drive shaft. Put oil in it, put the skid plate back on. Battery's dead because I had to have it in neutral, and apparently there's a lot of accessories available if you're in neutral, so screw you. Oh, piece of work. So I've got the battery all charged up. Little stinker starts now. Let's put it in drive and it goes. Put it in reverse and it goes. Beep, beep, beep. Go between. You get a little bit of a twitch because the tires on the floor are a little bit squeaky. But you don't get that nasty clunk you were getting before. There's a little clunk coming from the rear diff, the transfer case maybe, but nothing like what it was. Thanks for watching the video. Sorry it's too long for the people that like them short. Sorry it's too short for the people that like them long. I'm trying to find a happy medium. Been doing longer videos on Sundays and then the shorter videos on Wednesdays, you know, like the 3 to 5 minute quick tip stuff on Wednesday, and then the long sit down, take your time stuff on Sunday on the weekend when you have the time. So thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Feel free to share the videos on forums or anywhere you want to. And cheers. Thanks again for watching.